team hitting back-to-back Major League home runs. Nothing could stop us until prostate cancer stopped me in my tracks.
1 in 7 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer. Lucky for us, Dad caught his early.
It was difficult to speak up because of what was happening to me. 1 in 20 men will have advanced disease when first diagnosed.
Unfortunately, too many men live in a silent era because below-the-belt issues can be tough to talk about.
If you are living with prostate cancer and have symptoms like aches, fatigue, difficulty walking, sleeping, unexplained pain, or difficulty doing normal activities, don't stay silent. The most important thing is the support of your family.
If you or your loved one has prostate cancer, speak up. Visit menwhospeakup.com to learn more.
This was a public service announcement from Zero, the end of prostate cancer, and Bayer.
If you suffer with diabetes, there's a 25% chance that you'll develop a foot ulcer that can lead to severe health consequences, including amputation. At the sole authority, at little or no cost, you can receive your very own therapeutic shoes and custom inserts. Medicare recipients are entitled to 1 pair of quality diabetic shoes and 3 custom inserts. Call the Sole Authority today, 954-597-7060.
Peekaboo, peekaboo, smile.
Smile, buddy.
Come on, smile. Oh, honey, he's still not smiling.
Maybe he's not a smiler.
Yeah, maybe he's just not a happy baby.
Maybe he's just being a boy. You know how boys are.
Or maybe he's teething. Oh, poor baby. I think his gums hurt.
Maybe he's just tired.
Or maybe his tummy hurts. He didn't eat that much.
Maybe he's not ticklish.
You think maybe he's scared of the dog?
Maybe he'll outgrow it. Maybe it's a phase. Maybe he just doesn't like smiling.
Maybe he has autism, and we can definitely do something to help.
Maybe is all you need to find out more about autism. No big, joyful smiles by 6 months is one early sign. Learn the others at autismspeaks.org/signs or see a doctor today for an autism screening. The sooner it's diagnosed, the better. And it can make a lifetime of difference. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Talk here. Talk there. Talk 1470 AM and 95.3 FM. The Health and Wealth Radio Network. WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of the station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to the Golf and Travel Show, the place to fine-tune your swing, dress for the course, club, or cruise, and get tips on the best places to play and stay at the right price. Vacation or staycation, host Dan Shub, along with his expert co-hosts and guests, will tell you where to go. To play golf and vacation, that is. Now, here's Dan.
Welcome to the Golf and Travel Show. I'm your host, Dan Shub, and tonight, like we typically do around this time, we're going to talk a little bit of golf. We're going to talk some travel. We'll talk about things that are closer to home, and we'll talk about things that are further away. I got some good deals for you. I'll save them for later on in the show. And earlier in the show, in just a little bit, we will be chatting first up with a fellow by the name of Leonard Firestone. And his title is an interesting one, a little bit different from who we normally talk to. He is the distiller and proprietor of Firestone and Robertson Distilling. And not only do they distill whiskey in Texas, but they have a new place called Whiskey Ranch where it will be a distillery and a wonderful golf course with a tremendous history. So you're going to want to hear about that. And then a little bit later on in the show, we will be talking to Bob Rowe, and he is the CEO of Global Boatworks, just down the road a piece in Pompano Beach. And they will be exhibiting a really cool luxury living vessel by the name of Luxuria, and this is like a mansion on water. Just incredible, and you can see it at the Fort Lauderdale Boat Show, which is coming up the first week in November. So it's just around the corner, actually, November 1st through the 5th, I believe it is, but we'll find out more about that from Bob in just a little bit. So if you want to go check out this vehicle, not only is it available for sale, but I believe you can even lease it. So if you want to give it a little test drive before you buy it, you could do that too. So it's all pretty cool stuff. And usually we kick off the show and we talk golf, but I think I'm going to save that until our next segment when we'll be talking about Whiskey Ranch. We'll be talking about golf, but I just got back today, actually, a couple hours ago from a trip that I took. Lately I'm on the road almost every week, so I come back with some new stories, and I'd rather save the time at the end of the show to talk about some other interesting travel news and some deals that I have for you. So I figure we'll talk a little bit about my trip, because I always do, because that's what I do. I'm always on. I'm on assignment. No matter what I'm doing or where I'm going, I figure I could report back to you people. And so I was in Chicago, and I haven't really been in Chicago in a very, very long time. So this was unique for me. And unique for this time of year for us Floridians was being out there where they had frost warnings, I think for tomorrow, and possibly some snow flurries coming up this weekend. And it was a bit nippy. This guy who's been living in Florida for about a quarter of a decade now, my blood has thinned. So, but you know, I was right on top of Lake Michigan, and the air was fresh, and the wind was blowing like it does in the Windy City, of course. And it was just a little bit refreshing. So I always like to give everybody an update on my travels so that you can learn from what's good and what's bad, and make your own plans accordingly. So first of all, I flew out there on Southwest to Midway, which was a great move, because as you all know, Southwest is my favorite airline, and they rarely, if ever, disappoint me. And of course, it was a great trip. The price was right, and going into Midway was pretty cool. I was out there for a convention at the McCormick Place, and it seems that Midway is about a 10-mile cab ride. And if you go into O'Hare, it's about 20 miles. And the Ubers and Lyfts are slightly less, but not much. And so it saved me some money on the cab, and it saved me a bunch of time. On the way back, it was a little bit different. So I'll kind of give you the round trip story about the air. I came back on American Airlines, which is not my favorite airline. But they were surprisingly good. So I give them good scores this time. The staff worked great. It was on time. They had, a newer plane, than some of the ones in the past years, because I don't fly them that frequently. They have thrown me off a plane before with other people, which was a bad experience, but you know, a lot of the airlines have had some bad experiences, and they're trying to do better. So I'd have to say that American is trying to do better, and they succeeded this time. Although this time I flew out of O'Hare, and just in comparing the airports, you know, still not a huge fan of Fort Lauderdale. I know that they've been investing a lot of money to try and improve it. In my opinion, they haven't done much. Flying into Midway, I don't even remember the last time or if I ever flew into Midway again. I only go to Chicago on rare occasions, so it's been several years. And Midway, known to be much, much smaller than O'Hare, but O'Hare is massive. So Midway was pretty big too, and it was quite modern, and they had plenty of options and places to eat and things to do, and so it was a nice airport. Coming back, I had a flight about 8:30 this morning. And of course, it's a Friday, and they just changed some TSA rules to kind of make security a little bit tougher, but not for domestic flights, only for international flights. So beware, if you're flying into the U.S. from out of the country, they will probably be a little bit more rigorous in checking your electronics, like your laptops and iPads and things like that. Also, they're supposedly going to be questioning you a little bit more rigorously. But we did leave plenty of time. You know, we were staying downtown by McCormick Place, right on the lake. And even though we were leaving we left at 6 a.m. So, and we're going away from the city. So, you know, the thought is the traffic shouldn't be too bad. There was traffic. So big cities like Chicago, anytime, even when you think there's no traffic, leave extra time. We get to O'Hare, and the line to get through the TSA was just massive. I mean, I haven't seen a line so big. It was way beyond the roped-off areas that they have, and it stretched all the way across a huge bank of check-in lines for American Airlines. And we took one look at it, and we had plenty of time, but it was like, really? We're going to have to stand on that? And again, TSA, you know, the good, the bad, I report on it. I got to tell you, this line was moving incredibly fast, and it took much less time than we thought that it would, because they had a pretty good system going on. And the most interesting thing, well, first of all, when I left Fort Lauderdale, let's see, that was, I guess, on Tuesday afternoon, I'm walking out of the parking garage. The first thing I encountered was some U.S. military submachine guns in hand. I haven't seen that in the States much. I mean, I've seen that in, Central America or Mexico or Europe or places like that, but have not seen that here. So they have obviously stepped up security here too. When I got to O'Hare, same thing. Military, submachine guns. But what was the coolest thing is in the middle of the roped off area for the TSA, they had a special row that went right in the middle of all of the passengers that were waiting online with a security officer with a dog. It was a German Springer Spaniel. This was the James Brown of security dogs. I have never. It is the hardest working dog in America. This dog was going back and forth as fast as you can imagine, sniffing everybody's suitcases, their carry-ons, their legs, once, twice, 3 times, back and forth, and you would pass him a second time. This dog deserved a bone or multiple bones. I have never seen such a hardworking TSA dog in my life. And, kudos. I mean, this massive line with this heavy duty security, it didn't take but 15 or 20 minutes to get through. And it looked like at first glance that this was going to be an hour-long ordeal. So you feel better about security because they're doing a really good job of checking everybody, not only with humans, but with the dogs as well and with their machinery too. Yet everybody went through. Although I have to say, I didn't say this, but when I got to Fort Lauderdale on Tuesday to head out to Chicago, as my backpack and my carry-on suitcase is going down the conveyor belt, it goes into the X-ray machine for them to look at it, and the machine broke. My stuff and one other guy's stuff. And we stood there, and we stood there, and we stood there until they finally figured out that they need to get these things out of there, that it's really not fair to us that their machine broke. The funny thing is, I'm not going to mention any names. I don't know any names, but the guy who was trying to get the machine to work, he turned it off and turned it back on, kind of like rebooting, your computer. He thought that might work. It didn't work. He got in trouble from his superior. This woman TSA officer comes over and, she asks, you didn't do anything yet, did you? And he said, no, I didn't do anything. She takes the keyboard that's, I guess, controls the computer that controls this X-ray machine or whatever, and starts banging it on the table to try and fix it. So, I mean, I would have said that in jest that, that if things are broken, I give them a smack or I give them a kick. I wouldn't say it to the TSA. You don't want to get in trouble with them by suggesting anything like that. But to see her actually, and then she commented to them that sometimes the keys get stuck on the keyboard. So by banging it, it loosens the keys up. So there was a method to her madness, but it just, to me, here you're looking at this expensive, government equipment for security for the airport, and it breaks like that, and then she's smacking it, around to try and get it to work again. So I thought that was kind of interesting. In any event, so I get out to Chicago, and the hotel I stayed at happens to be adjacent to the McCormick Place. So that's very cool because it's cold outside, and you always want to be close to your convention that you're at because you got to walk in and out of sessions, and then there's sometimes not, there's an event at night. So we stayed at the Hyatt Regency McCormick Place. I don't stay at Hyatt's very frequently. It was okay. It was not that impressive. I had an opportunity to visit another Hyatt Regency, which was more in the downtown area, and that one was much nicer. But I guess you pay for the convenience, although the convention I was attending, even though we were attached to the convention center, it was about a mile walk to get to the area that we were at. So, not so good. Dining, I didn't get a chance to get out too much. Did want to check out the deep dish pizza. Went to a place called Pequod's Pizza, which is more of a family kind of place that was recommended by the locals. Not bad. My favorite is still Giordano's, both in Chicago and, they have opened up other locations. For instance, there's one right in front of Bally's in Las Vegas that I frequent often, and it tastes just as good as in Chicago. So, fallacy. You don't have to go to Chicago to get good Chicago deep dish pizza. Go to Giordano's, and Pequod's was okay, but just not my favorite. It's kind of like cheesesteaks in Philadelphia. Everybody's got their own personal favorite. So, what's my favorite may not be your favorite, but what can I say? The other thing, we were recommended, the concierge recommended us to a Thai restaurant. I don't even know the name of it. It was horrible. So, they do have a nice Chinatown, but the Thai, at least this place, I was a little bit surprised. Not that great. The event that I went to last night was a lot of fun. It was a party for the end of the convention. great Chicago's blues band. I was talking to my colleagues and kind of hoping that I had the opportunity to go to a Chicago blues club. We didn't have the time, so it was great that we got to see them, and they were the opening act for Kool and the Gang. And how cool is it to actually go to a party and hear that song Celebrate, which you hear at every big party, that you go to, but actually have Kool and the Gang there singing it for you. That's very cool. Pun intended, I guess. But it was a great party. It was a good time in Chicago. It is a beautiful city. I think I'd rather go there when the weather's a tiny bit warmer, though. But I'm sure I will be going back, and of course, you'll get to hear all about it because you guys all hear about everything I do. So my life's an open book, I suppose. But what we're going to do is it's just about time for a break. And after a quick break, we are going to come back and we're going to be talking to Leonard Firestone. He's the distiller and proprietor of Firestone and Robertson Distilling. A little bit of Texas whiskey and golf. So you're not going to want to miss that. So stay tuned for more of the Golf and Travel Show. We'll be right back. And we are back, and if your business needs industrial workers or if you're looking for work, you got to call Labor Finders. Labor Finders places for temporary or temporary to hire opportunities for skilled, semi-skilled, or general labor positions such as plumbers, electricians, concrete workers, forklift operators, hospitality, golf course maintenance, office clerical, and so much more. Labor Finders has almost 200 offices nationwide. Near here in Boca Raton, they have offices in Homestead, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, and in Jupiter. So if you need legal, insured workers, or if you're looking for work, call Labor Finders toll-free at 800-864-7749. That's 800-864-7749, or visit laborfinders.com.
In my mind, I'm going to Carolina. Can't you see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moonshine? Ain't it like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? Oh, I'm gone.
And we are back. And I was hoping to play a different tune. Somehow we got mixed up a little bit there. Let's see if we could pull that up. I wanted to set the mood a little bit for our next guest. And I think Carolina was where I was last week. I can't keep track of every place that I'm at, but when I hear the music, it brings it all back to me. So I don't know. Blake is going to try and see if he could pull that up for us. Blake, any hope? He's working on it. He's working on it. We've got to get in the mood to talk whiskey. And I'm not a huge whiskey drinker. I've drank a little whiskey here and there in my day, but I got to get us all in the mood somehow. Blake, can you help me here? He's working on it. Come on, Blake. There we go. This is better.
Well, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me.
And we are back now the right way. So thank you, Blake, for that. But to talk a little bit about whiskey, and you know, to be honest with you, I didn't know that there was Texas whiskey, but I guess there is, and we're going to find out a little bit more about it from the guy who runs the distillery, Firestone and Robertson Distilling Company, none other than Leonard Firestone, their distiller and proprietor. Leonard, are you with us?
Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's a pleasure to have you with us. So, first of all,
I thought Blake was going to give us a little Willie Nelson, maybe Stevie Ray Vaughan. But,
we surprised you.
I'll go with the Doors and that song. That's probably good. that probably leads to a lot of good sales with the message of that song.
I would think so. That's what I was hoping to do. So, I mean, we're trying to get people in the mood to come visit you guys. That's we wanted to give them a little tease. But
sure.
So explain to me a little bit about this. Now, I know that there's this whole micro brew thing that took off, and now it seems that micro distilleries are becoming more and more popular. What possesses somebody to get into the micro distillery business to begin with?
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities, and I can, of course, just speak for myself in that it was something I was really passionate about, just whiskey in general. It's kind of as a hobbyist, just understanding brands and understanding the provenance of whiskey, which is really very interesting once you kind of get into it and learn why whiskeys taste the way they do, because of where they're made and what's used to make them. And, that's kind of what got me going. But I think part to answer your question is, consumers are very interested these days, kind of that foodie mentality of, local ownership, the local distillery. A lot of times you'll find, like breweries, the distillery will use grains, in our case, corn and wheat from the area. And I think people find that really interesting and a choice from the big brands.
So similar to the micro breweries, this is also similar perhaps to the farm to table thing with foods these days.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy for sure.
So then how would you describe what it is that makes the flavor of your whiskeys different? You mentioned the grains. I'm assuming that perhaps how you age it, the barrels, similar to beers or wines as well, and the water perhaps. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it does and to your palate at least, how you could describe what it tastes, what's different about it?
Sure. So you've identified all the different aspects that contribute to that, but I think we have two products. One is it's called TX blended whiskey, and it's a classic American whiskey. It's a traditional whiskey in the respect that, the original Scotch whiskeys were all blended whiskeys, and they discovered by mixing different whiskeys together that you could potentially come up with a better flavor than the one on its own. So we did that with our first, and we released that in June of 2012. March of 2013, it won out at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition Best American Craft Whiskey, which was really an incredible honor. And that particular product, that whiskey, what it's known for is how smooth it is, and there's really no bite or burn. And we worked very hard on that and chose different whiskeys that would help us achieve that goal. What you'll smell is like a vanilla and a caramel, and what you'll taste is what we call a honey butter with a great finish. So it's almost like it's so smooth, so easy to drink. A lot of women like it, and which was one of the biggest surprises we had. But it's unique in that way because of the lack of bite or burn. Our bourbon, which we also started making in 2012, but let age until this past December, so it was almost 5 years in the barrel. It's a classic bourbon, and it has to be because bourbon is a federally regulated product. A lot of people think it has to be made in Kentucky, and that's not the case, but it can be made anywhere in the U.S.
Well, Tennessee is known for some bourbon too, right?
Well, they call it a Tennessee whiskey, and
Okay.
it's like a bourbon, but has a maple charcoal filtering, which changes it just slightly. So we used, as I mentioned, Texas corn and Texas wheat. We developed our own Texas, a yeast strain we got from a pecan nut, which is the Texas state tree. Texas water, the climate here, of course, is very influential. So, as I started to say, to be a bourbon has to be at least 51% corn in the recipe, has to be aged in a new charred oak barrel. We can't distill it higher than 160 proof and can't put it in a barrel higher than 125 proof. So you do all those things. You have a bourbon. You include or develop it with those local ingredients. You have a very distinct Texas bourbon.
Now, well, let's take a step back. So you originally had one location where your distillery was. I'm assuming similar to some of the micro brew pubs, you would make your whiskey and your bourbon there, and people could come and they can taste it and drink it as well.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly,
so where was
absolutely.
that located exactly in Texas?
So downtown Fort Worth, basically. It's about a half mile from downtown on the south side of town.
Mm-hmm. And that wasn't enough for you, though, right? So I guess it must have been very successful because you're opening up a second location. But so why don't you tell me a little bit, when did it open and when did you come to the realization that, hey, we need another location?
Yeah, no, it's been quite a ride, Dan. I mean, it's really been amazing. So we launched the first whiskey in June of 2012, and it was in February after we saw our sales just absolutely blow through every forecast we had imagined. Early 2013, we decided we got to figure out how we're going to make more whiskey. Mm-hmm. This is just crazy. So, in our downtown distillery, we have two 500-gallon pot stills, which produce about 3 barrels of 53-gallon barrels. That is, they produce about 3 of those a day, mm-hmm. and which is fairly significant for a craft distillery. Mm-hmm. We're one of the largers, or that facility is one of the larger ones in the country. So, though we had greater ambitions for our brand and where we wanted to share the whiskey, meaning we wanted to take TX bourbon and TX whiskey around the country and internationally. So we started to look for property because you need a lot of land, most notably for large barrel barns you may have seen in Kentucky or heard about.
Sure.
Where, your bourbon's got to go age for 5 years, 10 years.
Yep.
And that takes up a lot of space. So we needed land. And we started looking around Fort Worth and looking at ranch properties and so forth, and pretty quickly discovered that, to bring in the utilities and infrastructure would be just too cost prohibitive. So we started looking again, and this was about a 9-month process, looking in the Fort Worth area. And, there was nothing very remarkable that we were finding, kind of business parks, and, just really we got frustrated. Until one day I was on an internet search engine. It was one evening, and I'm scrolling down and looking at these properties and land, and this property comes up, and it says Glen Garden Golf and Country Club for sale. And I kind of looked at the address and put it into MapQuest and discovered that it was about 5 miles from our distillery downtown. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh my God, what is this? Glen Garden. And so I walk across the hall to my partner, Troy Robertson. I said, man, have you ever heard of Glen Garden? And we're both golfers. Mm-hmm. And he plays at Colonial. He's a member there, where of course they have the PGA Tour event. And I'm over at the oldest course in Fort Worth, which is called Rivercrest. And he said, yeah, that's you don't know that course? I said, no. He was like, it's right around the corner. And did you know that's where Ben Hogan and Byron Nelson grew up caddying and learning how to play the game?
Wow.
It's like, you got to be kidding me. So,
and was it still in operation? It was open and for sale, or it was okay.
It was operating and for sale. And, the two guys, it had basically gone through some hard times, and there were 2 people that owned it. It was no longer owned by the membership. And, one of the gentlemen, who's just the sweetest guy, was 92. And that was probably 4 years ago. And, another gentleman who was about 80. And, they were essentially keeping the course and the club afloat because they loved it. Their friends loved it. They grew up here with Hogan, with Nelson, and it was just a very special place to them. And